Hey, bird watchers, welcome to the Shift Left podcast, where we explore the tools, practices, and people transforming the localization industry. I'm Dan Milzarski, the VP of Solutions at Blackbird.io. And so the question is this going to be a commercial for Blackbird? And I'm going to say it's in the same sense that G.I. Joe is a commercial for toys. We're going to absolutely be breaking down Blackbird in our episodes, but we want to tackle specific real-world use cases and show what's possible. And today's episode is about multilingual content ops, scaling without the chaos. Yes, you can do that, I'm sure. I'm joined today by Peter Argondizzo. Did I get that right?
You did very well. You did very
pretty
well.
Good, right? Yeah. I have a little bit of Italian in my background as well. So
I was gonna say you're from Jersey. There's every third person's Italian.
But you are the founder and CEO of Argo Translations, and you've spent over 2 decades, 25 plus years, right?
30, believe it or not.
30. Whew.
Yeah.
And you've been focusing on helping companies to navigate the complexities of multilingual content. Under your leadership, your company has become a really trusted partner for organizations looking to scale their localization efforts, and with a focus on quality and control of those processes. You've got a really great background in not just language, but also tech, client services, which I think is key in this industry, but also in this day and age where everything is so tech heavy that people lose sight of the client focus. So I'm really excited to have you on the show. And you are also a fellow podcaster. And so I was joking beforehand in a little bit of the pre-show that I'm recording your show. I think it's next week. Your show might come out before this one. So there's going to be a little bit of time travel at play here where, if you're watching this, go listen to Peter's podcast. If you listen to Peter's podcast, then you can maybe eventually watch this. So anyway, thanks again. Thanks again for joining. It's a brand new show. I'm going to try to get a rhythm. It's going to take some time, and you're the first astronaut in space here. So I appreciate that. So thank you once again.
Thanks for having me, Dan. It is one hell of an honor to be on the first show. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Looking forward to our chat today.
Yeah, and I mean, we were saying in earlier that this is now 7+ years of you doing your show, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
And we were just chatting in pre-show that there's definitely been some hot and some cold, and we've changed co-hosts a little bit, but I've been with Patrick Daly, who actually was a former employee. He was an employee when he started co-hosting, and he's like, hey, if I leave, can I still be on the podcast? And I'm like, well, you're leaving on good terms. So yes, absolutely. So it's nice. And he's in the ad agency realm now. So PR and ad agency. So he brings another little take to it, which is great. So we have a lot of fun doing it.
So, I mean, you're 130, I think we said that 7 or 8 episodes in now. Do you remember the first one? Do you remember that first episode? And I'm sure how well it went.
It has, well, yeah. And back then we were editing, and now just for the fun of it, Dan, we don't edit. So it's great. So we get some real craziness. But I believe the topic was, how does translation memory work? So, I'm sure there were some people all across everywhere that were having trouble sleeping, and they play that one, and that one just puts you right out to sleep. We had a good chat about translation memory. So the idea of Translation Confidential was that we wanted to demystify some of this stuff. So I love, Dan, that you're going to tackle that. Hey, Lang Ops doesn't have to be this like, oh my God, I have to hire 17 developers, and this is going to cost me a fortune before I can even do one little cool automatic thing. So I love that. I love the mission. I love what you guys are trying to do as an organization, and I love that the podcast is going to support that. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this before, and I've done some live talks and webinars, and my degree's in history, right? Like, I mean, if you get in the way back machine,
perfect fit for the translation industry.
Exactly, So I stumbled face first into the language services industry, language solutions industry, language integration industry, whatever you want to call it nowadays. I stumbled into this, and I think of the same way as a demystifying technology. And that's what I've always tried to do when I'm speaking to people that are afraid of technology. They're afraid of machine translation. They're afraid of AI. It's like, yeah, let's peel back the curtain a little bit. This is the Wizard of Oz. Like, you got to, if you can understand maybe not the full technicalities of all these work, because I don't understand the full technicalities of how all this stuff works, but know enough to be confident, be a little less afraid of this, I think would go a long way. So, yeah, I think that's one of the themes of this show throughout is going to be talking about like, yeah, to your points, you can have your cake and eat it too. You can be highly automated. You can leverage AI. You can do these multilingual content operations at scale without having a full team of developers to be able to do it. So, really exciting. Before we get into the chaos of content ops, let's talk about growing up in an Italian household in Wisconsin.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So that's like probably the inspiration for my, because so in full disclosure, Dan, thanks for sharing your background. Mine's in finance. So how the hell did I end up here, right? My degree's in finance and human resource management. I think I use both of those now in my work, but really I didn't like my options after college. So I took a job as a translation project manager at a medical device firm. But previous to that, growing up in a small town in the south side of Milwaukee, we were the Italians, the odd folks. There was a very, very like Polish, but like third generation Polish sort of town. So, we were a bit of an oddity. Kids would come over to our house, and I remember it's like, hey, mom, can my friend Paul stay over for dinner? And she'd be like, I don't mind, but we're having stuffed squid tonight. You think that's gonna fly? And it's funny, my one friend was super adventurous. He's like, yeah, sure, whatever, I'll eat that. And he would, whatever my mom put in front of him, he would eat. And my mom's like, I like that one. Bring him back. That one's good. He's not a picky eater, so he can stick around. But it was fun. I mean, obviously steeped in language and tradition, just what you think of the average Italian family. But it was great because I grew up in a bilingual household. It gave me the opportunity. I didn't get to play Little League Baseball because guess what? My mom wanted to see her parents every summer. So we were in Italy every summer. So growing up with another culture and understanding, but even more importantly, kind of just that eye on, how my parents were treated. I'm not saying that they were treated horribly. What I'm saying is they were treated differently, right?
Mhm.
Um, the language skills weren't the best. Just seeing some of their friends struggle. A story that I've always shared is like kind of been an inspiration for me is I was like in sixth grade and I was at the bank, with my little printed passbook before they had them. My dad was a big frugal saver. It's like anytime we got some money, he's like, well, half of that's going into your savings account. So I'd march down to the bank. But anyways, older gentleman was there. He didn't speak English and he was trying to withdraw some money and he was struggling. He was speaking dialect, Calabrese dialect. So I'm like, well, I can jump in on this. So I, I helped him and interpreted for him so he could make a withdrawal. And I just remember the teller saying to me, "It was so great that you happened to walk in at that time. You were able to help out." And, ended up that I chatted with this old timer. And of course, he knew my folks. And, so it was nice. And he ended up calling my mom later and saying, what a nice young man I was. It's kind of like, I guess that was the advent of like, hey, you can actually help people with language. And I was fortunate to study Italian, under Larry Baldessaro and Robin Yazzi. I still keep in touch with Larry. He's a mentor of mine and just had some really good influences. My dad was always a scrapper, my mom a scrapper, just, kind of that, how do we get forward? How do we move forward? Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I love my heritage. I still have a lot of family back in Italy. My brother lives there actually. He did a study abroad program and never came back. So, um, you know, um, so glad to have that as like my background, really.
Packers fan?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
all my friends here in the Chicago area hate me for it. They're all, Bears fans, obviously, though I will say I have become a Cubs fan. My son played baseball, all through like, from 8 until let's see, he was 19 when he finally stopped playing baseball. And we just ended up being a Cubs fan. I still cheer for the Brewers when they're not playing the Cubs, but I am a Cubs fan.
Yeah, I'm yeah, long-suffering Mets fan, so I mean, I can relate to droughts of World Series wins and so forth. So Cubbies finally did, and the Cubs look good this year too. I was actually at
They
a Cubs
do.
game Last Friday they were playing the Yankees. I went to with my buddy to a Yankees and
Oh,
the
was that
Cubs.
the
Yeah,
11-0 shellacking?
yeah, it was the shellacking
Oh,
one. Yeah,
yeah, and Bellinger had to put it back in our face. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. What did he have? 3 home runs, I think. It was
yeah,
ridiculous.
it was three. Yeah, it should
And
have been
he,
four, I think too. Yeah,
yes,
I think one got robbed.
one got robbed. I'm like, wow, what a crazy. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, it's going to be interesting in the stretch. Be a fun football season this year for sure.
Yeah, I think Packers. Yeah, they look good. I think they got a good shot. So
Yeah, and I don't know, you've got Mr. Rogers around, so in
over in
Pittsburgh,
Pittsburgh.
we'll
Yeah.
see. We
Yeah.
all the old Packer fans sort of keep an eye on him. He didn't do much with your Jets that well, I don't know. Are
No,
you
no.
you're not a
I'm
Jets
not a
guy, are
Jets.
you?
I'm not.
Oh,
Oh
okay.
my God. I don't even want to get into it. I'm a Los Angeles Rams fan. So like, there's a long
That's on
twisted
the other side
story.
of the country.
It's on. I know, and maybe after show I can tell you the stupid history of how I became a Rams fan. But
All
yes,
right.
I'm a Los Angeles Rams fan. I can't really root for these. Yep. MetLife Stadium is literally 15 minutes away from my house. Like I pass by it all the time. It's just like right there. So it's like I'm well aware of Aaron Rodgers. I thought he was going to go the Brett Favre route. I thought he was going to go to Minnesota. They didn't want him, So
They're like, now they burned that bridge already. They're like, nah, we've already had the washed up Green Bay Packers quarterbacks. We're not going that route.
cool, awesome. Well, yeah, I think that you know language, culture, background, like all these things like play a role in your day to day. I think that like that story that you said, I think that resonates so well with just helping people communicate. I think that's what I like to do, right? I think that's why I've stayed in the industry for 20 plus years is it's this concept of there's people in the world that need to be able to talk to each other and communicate with each other. It's not just even about, languages, that sometimes it's accessibility, right? This concept of even, having ASL and you know, subtitling, all these things that allow people to communicate. And I think that's it does stem from this feeling of we think back to our grandparents or parents, and you know they come to this country and yeah they're treated differently, they're looked differently, they don't speak the language, and how can we try to bridge that gap? And I think the world has become so much more global, especially since I started in the industry in 2003, and even prior to that, internet was booming. I remember, talking to a company that used to do translations by fax machine, and then when the internet came along, it's like, great, now we're changing our branding from using fax machines to the internet. We're going to be using the internet, and then cat tools came around, and so these waves of technology. And I think we're now in this brand new wave of where our industry's going and what the technology can do, and it's great, but it's also scary and it's also messy, and we're going to stumble, we're going to make mistakes and so forth. So I'm happy to kind of talk to you about that over your career. 30 years, I can't believe that you're such a young looking man, like
Oh,
30 years you
geez.
started. They had
There must be a
really in
filter on the
Wisconsin,
camera.
they had you working when you were like 2 years old. Come on, Peter.
It was like right out of college, you know. So I was working at Marquette Electronics at the time, which was a device manufacturer, and I was managing. I was their Italian project manager essentially. So when the finance world didn't quite meet what I was looking for, because it was hilarious. I had a good job in college. I worked for an airline. It was called Midwest Express Airlines, and they're no longer around. But it was a great experience, and I was making like decent money. And then I graduate, and I'm looking at these sort of like these in the finance world, these sort of like internship or manager trainee program kind of things. And I'm going like, man, I'm going backwards, and I have to wear a suit every day and go park downtown. I'm like, oh, this doesn't make sense to me. I graduated and I'll make less money. So I wasn't like it didn't appeal to me. And then I answered this ad, must speak Italian, be interested in translation. And I went, had a great interview, and I loved it. I loved it. And yeah, it was the advent of, we barely had internet there. Um, and translation, I had an old Apple Mac 2, I guess those things were, and it had some multilingual capabilities. So it was like a big deal. You could actually type in a foreign language. How crazy is that? But this is how we did translation. We'd send a hard copy of a manual to a translator. They would, in Word, do flush left translation, send it back, and we had They used to be called a paste up department because they literally had a paste up board. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's like literally where you take blocks of text and you put it on a board and then you take a picture of it and that becomes the page. So then it was like revolutionary that we had, I think we were using Quark Express or PageMaker or one of those applications in the day. And we had a desktop publishing department. So they would take that flush left text. They didn't speak the language and they're just pouring it into a layout. And then we would send a printed copy back to the translator to review. I mean, to tell you how crazy, and that's only 30 years ago, right? And you are absolutely right. The acceleration was crazy. And those were crazy and fun times in the industry when, Trados 1 came out. And I will tell you, I've referred to this multiple times. A lot of the angst we're seeing today, Dan, is the same angst you saw about
Cyclical.
27 years
Yeah.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we had translators that were, probably closer to the end of their career and they're like, I'm done. Like, this is it. The computers are taking over. I don't like this translation memory stuff. I don't want it. But then we had other translators who were like, oh, wait a minute. So now instead of doing about 2,500 words a day, if I start working in, technical manuals and stuff that's repetitive content, there could be days where I'm churning 8,000 words, right? Because I'm getting a lot of reuse and recycle. So those that embraced it and grasped onto it, and it was funny in the day. It's like Trados wasn't really here. They had resellers, so he's no longer with us. I was working with Brian Briggs down here in Evanston, and he was reselling Trados licenses. And this ploy that we came up with is like, okay, we got to get translators to adopt, but it's $1,200. I mean, imagine that, Dan, $1,200 for a license. And we were like, hey, this is what we're going to do. We will foot the bill for you, and you can work it off. And that was kind of how we got a bunch of translators to adapt Trados. So we would pay for their license and say, we'll do like a couple $100 credits on each invoice until you get it paid off. And we had people like translators calling, we heard you have a Trados deal. I'm like, well, what language do you speak? Do I need this? So anyway, just crazy times, right? Then you just go through it like DSL, and every 3 days a DSL guy would go out of business, and then you're like, oh God, we got to go to T1. And I mean, I tell the young guys here, it's like, yeah, we used to pay $1,200 a month for 1.5 meg. They're like, what? So it's crazy. It's hard. But anyway, exciting. I see a lot of parallels, Dan. I think you're absolutely right that AI is just kind of the next level of this, and there's angst, right? We see it all. It's the doom scrolling, I think, makes sense. Boy, if you read LinkedIn and you see what some translators are saying, they're signaling the end of the world, and I don't believe it,
Yeah.
Dan.
No, and neither do I. It's funny too. Is I remember it was a few years ago. I did I was at a presentation. I did a choose your own adventure. Like, so it was interactive. I basically had
Mhm.
a presentation that had 10 different endings. There's a PowerPoint, and I'd have to click, and so the audience basically chose their future. Like it, and they
How
got to
cool is
interact.
that?
And so the whole theme of it was, and I remember there's this great picture of me standing there with a meteor coming down behind me as if it's going to destroy the language industry. And I mean, yes, there is this potential that bad things can happen, but it's almost like you're manifesting that destiny yourself. It's almost like you're the one that's causing these bad things to happen. And if you did kind of embrace it and become part of the change, then it won't be as scary. I one way or the other, and this is a perfect segue into the topic here is the end customers aren't going to wait anymore. There was a period of time where I felt like enterprise customers or end customers were okay to wait for an LSP to figure things out or get back to them on things. And that level of patience is gone. I mean, I think the one thing that AI has absolutely changed is it's put translation at the top of the food chain. CEOs of large organizations are talking about translation now, where it used to be an afterthought. But now it's happening in these C-level conversations. There is no hiding it, and then the pressure gets pushed down once it's at the C-level. And I'm sure you know a little bit about that. The pressure gets pushed down of
Mhm.
great. Now I have to solve this problem. So you got IT departments in large organizations just going rogue and trying to figure things out,
Mhm.
right? They're not waiting for the LSPs to come to them with a solution. So as for thinking as LSPs can be to present a solution before chaos happens on that other side, the better it is. So I guess from your experience, thinking about companies that are trying to scale their multilingual operations. They're trying to, look at content now with this added pressure. Like, what are some misconceptions and common misconceptions that you've seen or heard about these companies when they're trying to scale globally?
It's interesting, Dan, at least in our product mix, so I can speak to our client mix. It, I've been sharing this story recently that we had a couple companies that, say maybe a year ago, like specifically sent formal letters, email and US mail. You are absolutely prohibited from using AI in any of our workflows. I'm like, okay, wow, this made it in both Fortune 500 companies. This made it to legal's desk. Well, interesting. Both companies, fast forward a year later, you get their project managers and like comms managers. We deal with employee comms managers a lot. Hey, can you tell me about this AI thing? Like, tell me a little bit about this. Like, so I open with, hey, can we talk about the letter we received last year? Well, yeah, we're slowly developing and figuring out best and in very, very corporate fashion, right? That means, their IT group has added Copilot to their Office licenses, and we're allowed to use Copilot. But they're investigating, they're looking. And then we have other clients that are, they're smaller, more nimble, and they're like, yeah, let's look at this. Let's figure out how this can help. But I think what's for me, a complexity as an LSP, a smaller LSP, is that we kind of have a foot in both worlds, right? We have some clients that are like, I don't want to look at that. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to do it. I mean, but then on the same hand, hey, I want to explore savings. And so, but then on the other hand, you've got clients that are like, hey, let's go. So then it's tough because you really have two delivery models. So, that's where I think, tools like Blackbird help to make us more nimble that we can operate in both worlds. Now, I think in a couple of years, I doubt we're going to have any clients that are saying, "Hey, I don't want to use any form of AI." But like that's kind of the fallacy to it, and we'll look at a few things in a minute. That I think it's not just the translation piece, right? AI can be used administratively. It can help you respond to RFPs. It can help in like one step of the workflow, which I love that Blackbird enables this, right? Is, hey, I need to detect the content in this piece. I need to create a voiceover file. So maybe that's at the tail end of the translation aspect. So there might be like a flavor of AI that gets incorporated, and I love that because clients then can adapt it at their own speed. And all of our clients, I can tell you, are at different like sort of different levels of how they're adopting AI. And like I said, we have some that are 100 miles an hour and some that are like, hey, we're doing this 5 miles an hour at a time. And I get it because, it might be translating IEPs, which, are the document that goes with the student that needs a specialized learning plan. Well, there's a lot of sort of confidential stuff about the child and the student and what the plan is. And, some school districts are like, well, I don't know that we're that comfortable. And then I tell them, well, the software you use from Pearson or wherever, like that little button that you hit that says translate now, there aren't little human gremlins doing that translation. It's getting chucked into AI somewhere. Oh, is that what happens? So I'm flabbergasted by. I had a conversation just quickly with someone at SHRM last year, the Society for Human Resource Management. He went on. It was like a 20-minute conversation. I can't work with you because we're so security minded. I don't even know how I'm going to get you the file. And I'm like, well, what do you do for translation now? He's like, well, I open the document, I copy the text, I go over to Google Translate, and I paste it in there. I stared at him blank for like 20 seconds. I'm like, you realize you're using free Google, you're cutting and pasting company content into an engine that uses everything. He's like, wow, I never thought of that. And so it floors me, Dan, that, on one hand, companies will say this, but then do this. And that's you've probably, I know you and I chat, and you've probably heard me talk about translation as a feature
Mhm.
and how that has to be used with care. I think, you go to DevLearn or you go to these shows and you see all we do translation now. Oh, awesome. Okay. And how do you do that? Well, we just chuck it to OpenAI. All right. I mean, it's cool. I'm sure, they're doing it via API. It's somewhat secure, but like, how repetitive can that be? So if you do the same manual twice, it's going to be different content, right?
Mhm.
It's like nobody's thinking about these things. And I think that's our role in the industry is to help clients to think about these things. It's like, there's a great way to use the tools, and then there's a not so great way to use the tools.
Yeah, no names or anything, of course. Can you think of a specific time where a client might have been struggling with their chaos?
Yes.
And yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So, I can't mention the name because I think in the NDA we
I
signed
would bleep it out. I would bleep
yeah.
it out anyway. There would be like a bleep or something like
Yeah.
that.
Well, so it's a large retailer, and they have their employees walk around with devices that essentially have like their knowledge base. So if they're like, how do I ask for sick time? How do I ask for vacation? How do I stock a shelf? You can imagine the types of things. It's in their knowledge base, their internal knowledge base. And they were manually cutting and pasting from SharePoint into a Word document, then putting it into a translation workflow, which we were involved in through. They actually have their own TMS, which is interesting, that they buy off the shelf. It's one of the brands that's out there, and we have to work in that tool to do the translations. And one day we just happened to bring it up. It's like, tell us about this process. She's like, oh, it's terrible, to do a one-page knowledge base article. We have so many steps. And I'm like, there has to be a smarter way to. She's like, yeah, I'd love to hear it. So our CTO, very forward thinking, says, hey, we can build a connector to SharePoint. So we built a connector. And incidentally, we hand coded that thing. Then Mark chatted with Bruno Bitter at Blackbird, and I think we can move like large scale pieces of the code, essentially into Blackbird functionality. So it's kind of a melange right now. It's a hybrid. It's a lot of actions are happening in Blackbird, and a lot of actionings are happening in a pre-processing engine that we have, and it integrates to BureauWorks, our TMS, which is really great. And that was absolute chaos. And now it's not. I mean, Dan, they basically write an article and they put a little checkbox on it that says ready for translation. And every night we just go in, and anything that's marked with that ready for translation, if it's been modified or it's brand new, we pick it up, we translate it, and we re-inject it.
Mm.
And it's as simple as that. And this client actually has a little bit of complication because they also want to do like a client review step. So we have a break in the middle. It gets translated, it gets reviewed, and then when it hits final state, the next drop off, pick up and drop off every day, it just re-injects it into SharePoint. We send them a bill once a month that says, here's what we did every day. It's just got a log, and it's all enabled by Blackbird, and no more cutting and pasting. All the content authors have become sort of their own translation agents because, all the people that write the content now just know that if they check that little box, then the magic happens.
I just want to go on record and say Peter is not a paid actor. Like this is not scripted. I didn't talk to him about this beforehand. I mean, honestly, thank you. You're making my life so much easier because this is shift left. This is exactly what we're trying to do. This is what we're talking about. Don't just accept that this is the problem that you need to solve. Like oftentimes, you know, asking, okay, well, what's your process? Like, how much time are you spending on this? What are you doing before it gets to me? Like asking these simple questions. And now change management is hard. We've seen it before where it's like, okay, we do have to solve for the problem today, but let's keep the customer involved. Let's be engaged to say, it's like, how can we improve this? Like if day one you need this content translated, we're going to do that for you. Understood. But let's see how we can work together to, yeah, move that process to the left side, try to solve the issue before it becomes an issue. And then and when you talk about ROI and you're thinking about, like, it's not just about per words. And I hate that our industry has just gotten so bogged down in this concept of per words or whatever it is. It's like you're solving problems. You're solving business problems at this point. You're looking at like the soft costs, the human efforts that are needed on that left side of the process, and you're removing them. And there needs to be some kind of recognition for solving these problems. So that was a great example. And I think that, it's not just Blackbird, but, again, I prefaced it with, this is a little bit of I don't know if you got the reference, but G.I. Joe or Transformers or any of
Yeah,
those,
absolutely.
those cartoons during the 80s were essentially just like getting me to go out and buy those toys. So
Hmm.
it's more just talking along the lines of where we're at with the technology has caught up with us helping to solve these problems because yeah, I mean, maybe 15, 20 years ago we could identify the problem and then it's like, okay, now, how do we solve it? Like, how do we, invest $100,000 in a connector or whatever that is to kind of solve this problem? And maybe it's like the content isn't going to be worth that. Now the technology's there.
I love that, Dan, and that's what the thing that I'm most proud of that is that again, we're not a monster-sized agency, but I still have to, we still have to compete with the billion-dollar agencies, and we were able to do this with our own dev resources. And then when we met Blackbird, because we thought, well, now, I have a small dev team. You have to maintain it, right? So, our CTO is like, hey, you know what? If we move wholesale chunks of this into Blackbird, it's less maintenance for us. It'll run smoother. There's less code for us to monitor. And we didn't need, and I'm not going to mention the names, but the big guys have their own platforms, and those are huge investments. So even for this client who said, "Hey, I don't have a ton of budget to do this, I can't go write a PO for six figures to get on their management system that only then puts me in their translation bucket." Um, it We solved the problem with a pretty decent budget. It was pretty low budget. And now, yeah, the ROI is crazy on this thing. We did a little calculator because they had all this labor in that cutting and pasting. And I'm like, man, like we are so beyond cutting and pasting. What are we doing here? Like I hadn't heard that process in a long time. I'm like, oh my goodness. So yes, absolutely. And I think that's really the key. And I think for those of us that are on the smaller scale of LSPs, we have to look at these solutions because guess what? If we're not talking about it with our customers, someone else will, and they're going to
Yeah.
eat your lunch. It's as simple as that. So that's why I love, that basically the power uh, that tools like yours provide us. So I think it's really an enabler for us to push forward and into this new era, right? It's this crazy new era.
Yeah, of course, prior to Blackbird, I come from the LSP side, and I'd always say, so smaller LSP, and I got to see that company grow tenfold over the years that I was there, and it was always just like got to cast a big shadow. I mean, that's when you're a small LSP, you got to be able to stand tall, come up with solutions, and figure out the best way to help your customers. And I think that putting in a solution like this is exactly the way to ingrain yourself forever, right? I mean, you're solving business problems, and that's what we're doing. And I do want to, in a moment, have you share your screen and walk us through some of the fun that you have. But before we get there, I mean, if you had maybe one piece of advice to a growing company that was preparing for multilingual growth, what would that be?
Company side, not
Yeah,
LSP.
company
Okay.
side, not LSP side. Yeah.
I think look for small efficiencies. And I think one of the mistakes that I see happen too often, Dan, is that customers will treat their translation as if they're buying widgets. In other words, they get a project, they send it out to three LSPs, and then whoever is the low bidder on that job wins. And then what they do is you win once, they win once, you win once, they win once. And I try because it sounds self-serving, right? So now I've kind of changed our pitch over the years to say, hey, look, it doesn't have to be us. I hope it's us, but pick one. Like do an RFP, make a 2-year commitment, understand that your most important, and even today, your most important your most important asset for translation is that database. Now I know that, there's a movement away from TMSs, and I just say, yeah, that's probably coming. The data lake concept, it, it's coming, but guess what? It still comes from somewhere. So it comes from the TMS historically and then goes into the data lake. But that database, you have this sentence equals this, and then you multiply the impact by the number of languages. So it's like take care of that asset, find yourself a provider that you like that meets all the needs, they check all the boxes, and then make a commitment, at least for a year, 2 years. Sure, get a rate sheet, keep them honest, audit to make sure they're charging you what's appropriate, make sure that they have some form of transparency and how they cost things. All those things are super important, but make a decision because you're squandering the asset otherwise. And that sets you up for success as the technology changes. Because now, I mean, we've got some clients, this was amazing, right? When we started messing around with neural machine translation engines that were trained in Azure, I had one client, they had 27 years of translation memory. Man, we took the blue scores from the low 50s into the low 90s. And we're like, okay, now we have some confidence in this. This is great first pass. And it's the SharePoint client that I'm telling you. It's one of the SharePoint clients. There was
Nice.
two of them. And it's a great first step. We still have humans in the loop. It's great. Everybody's happy, but that was made possible because they always trusted us with their translations. Now, again, it doesn't have to be us, doesn't pick someone and make that your route and stick to it and look for small wins. That was the big thing in the gala presentation I did this year with Zalan from EasyLing, and talked a lot about some of the work that we're doing inside of Blackbird in that presentation. But I said, look for small wins. You don't have to hit a home run. Automate some small part of your workflow and build on it, build on that success, collect some ROI, and keep building forward until translation becomes as automatic as walking down the street.
We've come full circle because I mean I love this piece of advice because if you think about like what we started talking about with Packers and football and baseball and stuff like that is the franchises that tend to succeed are the ones with consistency. They pick a manager, they pick a GM, they stick with it, they let them see through the process, and then they're not changing up managers all the time. Like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
those are the franchises that tend to have the most success. And I think it's the same thing here is if you're going through the process of vetting an LSP and so forth, changing LSPs or whatever that is, give it some time. I mean, because again, same thing. It's like, yeah, the incumbent, the other LSP has had the time to understand you and learn these things and give a chance to demonstrate the value, demonstrate the ROI without just like, 1 month in, this isn't working. We got to switch back to the former LSP or something like that. I think that's a great piece of advice, Peter, because the more that you understand your customers and you have a customer focus, the better that you can solve their problems. And you can't do that overnight. It's not a, same thing. Listen, I mean, you're a customer of Blackbird, right? And I've tried to, reach out to you and say, okay, what's going on? How can we help? Like, try to understand. And I was here, I don't know, like 2 weeks in, and you came to me with something. I was like, I have no idea. I'm going to figure it out for you. And you know what I'm saying? But that's what you do. You kind of build that trust. You build that, and it's not going to happen overnight. You think of human relationships. You're not just going to meet a person for the first day. It's like, I trust you with everything. Here's my PIN number and my bank card. Like, go have fun. I trust you. You're not going to do that in any human relationship. It's got to be built up, and you got to let that breathe. So I think that's a great piece of advice. So awesome.
Thank you.
Now I'm
So
putting you on the spot.
are we going to jump into the fun? Is that what we're
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
now?
we're
All
we're
right,
doing that now. I'm putting you on the spot now. Yeah.
let's go. All right, let me share my screen and hope I don't get any crazy things. I think sometimes it's fun to start with the product. So let me get another screen rolling if you bear with me 1 second because I think that's part of the fun. So because I want to show the flight in real time. So let me go here. All right. So basically, this is interesting. And I think one of the things that we talked about was, starting from the business problem and moving backwards, right? Because all too often, I think when people tackle this type of, like a workflow enhancement, they're just thinking, hey, this is cool. Well, okay, it's cool, but here's the background on this. Is we had a client approach us and said, we are a worldwide organization. We have help desks in multiple countries. And sometimes like the office in Japan will post an error message, but then, they go to sleep and we're left to work the ticket. And I actually don't know what the error message is because I don't read Japanese. Oh, all right, great. So we did this as a POC for them, and it's really quite cool. You see, I was testing it. So, but I want to do this because I want to show you the flight because I think this is a really cool thing that Blackbird just recently added. And let's just go ahead and upload this error message. And this is really cool. Once it's there, we're just going to send it. And then the way that this bird, which for those of you that don't know the terminology, it's like a recipe. So birds are arranged in nests, which are like a folder or a collection. And All we're going to do actually on this is we're going to add an emoji. So I'm going to add the English emoji. Now I'm going to drag over here, and let's see if I can get the flights going. Let's see if I can do it fast enough. Here it is. Okay, you see it's already running. So you see we're at this step and you're seeing this in real time. Oh, there it is. Now it's translating it using DeepL. So the flag is what kicked off and triggered the message. This is so cool because guess what? I'm not a developer, but I can troubleshoot in real time. Here it is. Basically, it translated this. So a couple things happened in this recipe, and this is what's cool about this, is it brought in different technologies. So it was OpenAI, and OpenAI recognized what the content was, recognized the language, and created a text string. It took that text string, sent it to DeepL, and created the translation. And here it is. Here's the translated text from the image. Sorry, Ubuntu 14.04 has experienced internal error. Please submit a bug report to help correct this problem. So it resolved exactly what the client was looking for. And what's cool is, remember how I said about nests? There's a concept of nests. This is the cool thing about the security. So let's say you have a client and they say, hey, we have our own OpenAI client. Hey, we have our own Slack client. You can create a nest for that client, and the credentials for their applications that they want you to use, or you can use your own, are secure. It's only used for that nest. So let's say you do a little Slack thing and a little Contentful thing. We're going to look at Contentful in a second. It can be all of their credentials and they just sit in that nest. So it's perfectly secure, which is really nice. But you see what we did here is we just said when someone, adds an image and then adds a flag, grab the message from Slack. It's going to create a loop because it does it. Let's say you did like 5 images, it would keep going. Convert into something that DeepL can understand, translate it, send the message. And we did it in ephemeral message. So did you see? So an ephemeral message in Slack is when it's in line like this. So, and then actually, I should step back on that. It's in line, but I actually turned off the ephemeral part of it here because ephemeral means it disappears. So that was another thing that the client asked, which is so cool. The client said, well, I don't want to embarrass any of our support agents, because if they say they speak the language really well, but they're always dropping flags on things, people might judge them. So the message is only visible to the user, which is really cool. But you can turn that part on or off. But then also from a translation viewpoint, I said, well, I have to monetize this, right? So then I used a utility to say, hey, we'll count the words in the text, timestamp it, format the date, and drop it into a Google Sheet. Now, when this would go live, instead we wouldn't stick it into a Google Sheet. This is my demo environment. We would actually feed it into a sales order in our ERP system, and that's what our CTO and the dev team designed. But it's pretty cool. It's a neat little workflow. But the cool thing about it is you start from the business problem and work backwards, and within a day or so, and that's me in a day or so. Someone who's far smarter than me probably does it in 2 hours, but in a day or so, you've got a solution that you can use as a POC, right? Which is really cool. But there's so many different things you can do, because remember the way Blackbird works is you have a lot of different apps, right? So you could say 11 labs to create an audio file. You can use the piece that will just do a file. So you could upload a file and have that translated. And you could use Azure instead, a trained engine. You can feed it to your translation management environment. So again, I would urge anyone who looks at this, whether it's Blackbird or some other tool or even something they concept, start from the business problem and work backwards, because otherwise it's sort of like a parlor trick, right? So you really want to start from the business problem. I wanted to look at this other one, which I thought was really cool, was Contentful, and we use BureauWorks. So, or actually, this one is Salesforce.
This one's Salesforce. You're a Salesforce expert at this point, if I recall.
Oh, yeah. My gosh, there was some pain. That thing that Dan's talking about. He's like, man, I just started, and this Argondizzo guy's like hitting me. Like, what's going on? So, what's cool? The team is awesome, and they helped me concept this. And I was just explaining to someone, again, I am not a developer by any means. But I was able to put this together because this is instructions from my CTO. I was like, you get an idea for a POC. The way we want to use Blackbird is bang out a solution as quickly as you can. He's like, and then I'll clean up your mess. I'm quoting him. I'm quoting him. I'll clean up your mess. But what's
Sounds like
cool
something a
is,
CTO would say, by the way.
yes, it's very, very much on brand for those folks. But what's cool about it is with support, it usually isn't that messy, but we would have to put our ERP system on the back end. But what we did here is manual push just for the proof of concept. But you could make this a calendar push. You could make it based on a condition. So there's a lot of different things you could do, and the triggers sort of change depending on the application. But this is a connection to a Salesforce knowledge base. It gets the content as HTML, and it submits the article for translation, sends it to BureauWorks, uploads the file, and then here's like the breakpoint on project status change. So what that means, waiting for us to translate. Then when we complete the translation, the project status changes, and then BureauWorks will download the file and shove it back into Salesforce, which is so cool. And the loop, by the way, you guys, again, is what if there's 10 files at a time? It just loops through them and you get that little counter, kind of like we had on that flight. I don't know if you saw that. There was like a counter, because if we had multiple, it's a 1, 2, 3. It just sort of goes through, which is really cool. So that's my Blackbird story. Those are my two favorites. The Slack one always gets lots of cool comments. I love the one we did with 11 Labs, where it creates a message. And here's the use case for that. Because again, I think it's important to tie to use case. We have school districts that, like when, you get these in Jersey, you get a snowstorm and school closes. And I always laugh because when my son was in school, you get the message, they give you this like 3-paragraph thing about what's going on. And then all of a sudden the guy in like, not the best Spanish says, no, hay escuela mañana. And I'm like, okay, I think we can do better. I think we can do better. So this tool is very cool. You put a string in, just like we did. You drop a flag on it. It gets you the translation. And then you drop another emoji on it. And using 11 Labs, which is really cool. And they have the voice of Christy Carlson Romano. If you guys don't remember who that is, that's from Kim Possible. My son that was his age of Disney, Kim Possible. And she tells you in Japanese that there's no school tomorrow, or in Spanish. And it just creates the little audio files, which you can download and stick in your phone system. Pretty cool. So, those are things where I think also as linguists, right, we get upset about AI. People are kind of the ones that, that angst. I think you have to think of like that project would never happen. It snows, storm happens overnight. The school administrator's gone, man, my LSP is not even open right now. What do I do with this? That project doesn't even happen, but now we enable it to happen. And I'm still a firm believer, just like translation memory was, because for those of us that were around, translation memory, the translation industry was like this, and then it became like this. And I think AI is going to make it go like this. Now, a lot of the work is going to be done automatically, no question. But the thing that I want to think about is that that's probably a lot of that is work that would not have happened. But now expansion of budgets are going to allow it to happen. So that workflow, I think, is a great example of that. It's work that probably wouldn't have happened. But now, using the tools that we provide, and remember, you can still connect it to Azure, so it's a trained engine. You can still do some things so that it's better than just chucking something against DeepL or Google Translate. You're still giving them a secure path. I mean, there's all the cool benefits that us as LSPs can provide because of the connectors, the power that you guys give us.
Yeah, and just to kind of close that out, and that thought process is, when I have to do a client demo of Blackbird, I try to understand what they're trying to solve, and like I want to have a workflow and a bird that I can build towards, because it makes the demo work. I was on a client demo the other day, and they're like, "Oh, can we just see how it works?" And it was almost like deer in the headlights, Peter. Like, but what am I building? Like I like sitting
Right.
down like a blank canvas
Demo
of
of
the
what?
world is. So Bruno was on the call too, and he's like, "Oh, well, I've got one of their use cases," and I felt like a little puppet, a puppeteer. He's like, "Hey, do this," but it was great because you're working towards something. You were building towards a solution as opposed to just sitting there. And it's I experiment, I figure that out, but like it's more along the lines of, if I have a problem to solve, I sit down like a demo, like figuring out how Salesforce works. I have, another customer that Shopify is my new thing right now. I'm working in Shopify. It's like I've never worked in Shopify before, but now I'm becoming a Shopify expert to understand like I'm working towards solving a problem. And I think that's where we have to be, and I think that's where the focus needs to be. And then the technology enables you to solve problems. And I think that's the way that these content ops and the this multilingual mess, this chaos that we see ourselves in, can slowly go away, and we can help our customers grow. So again, yeah, thank you. I close out the show with you get like, kind of like last words. Like, what are your closing remarks here?
Um, Dan, I hope it's a message of hope. And not to sugarcoat that or be sappy, or it's just if because we're in the industry, right? So this is what we see. We log into LinkedIn, all the people we follow, and there's so much angst out there, and I think that needs to evaporate and stop. I think you would use the words that, hey, I think we're kind of, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we believe it's doom, it's going to be doom, and I think I would agree. And I saw a really cool post the other day, and it didn't start cool. They were bashing Disney, which, gosh, if you look at my off, well, it's blurred, but I got a lot of Disney stuff. I'm a Disney fan, but that's irrelevant. They were bashing Disney because, oh my goodness, they were using MTPE for subtitles. And I'm like, have you never watched Netflix? Like, literally. I mean, Netflix has been doing this for so long. And yeah, I mean, there was the whole story about Squid Game and how terrible those subtitles, all of that, right? It's a thing. Like, all these companies that are creating so much content struggle with that piece. So I don't know that you bash Disney because they're using MTPE. Well, they're not the only ones, guys. And then, you start to get that, well, maybe you should be an electrician or maybe go into plumbing. And I'm like, oh, guys. And finally, someone came in and posted and said, guys, I like to look at this a little bit differently. I like to think of all of the concern that our clients are having right now, right? We talked a little bit about it. It's like we have angst, but so do the clients, because you know why? Their boss is like, remember how 6 months ago I told you AI is dumb and we're never looking at it and it's a security risk and boom, 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 boom. I was kidding. Can you go look at it and figure out what we need to do? And now you've got a project manager, a communications manager who remember more often than not with our clients, translation is the 17th thing on their list. There are very few clients that have that, dedicated loc department. It's usually a comms manager, an engineering manager, and it's the 17th thing on their list. And like, now I got to figure out AI. What do I do with that? Where do I start? I don't even know if our translation vent, do they know what AI? I don't know. So think of all those things. And I just love that it's thought, hey, he's kind of changing the lens here, or the focus on the lens, right? And I love that. And I think we've always been huge advocates of client education. And I think that's what we all have to do, is we have to help our clients understand that's a terrible idea. Using AI in that way is going to kill you guys, cheapen your brand. But here's a smart way to use AI. And I think for me, that's kind of like the closing thought. It's been a thing that's really been running through my head is, let's try to be positive about this thing. And yeah, it's a change. We've seen change before. And, let's be part of the solution and not, saying bad things on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you once again, Peter, for joining us. For those of you watching, keep your eyes to the sky for more videos coming soon. And, I'm actually adding more YouTube content to the Blackbird channel as well. So other than this podcast, there'll be other video content that you can learn more about Blackbird and see some of these solutions that we're talking about, Peter, like some of these use cases, building out these birds and kind of showing people what is possible. And keep shifting left, friends. Till next time.